Okay, we have one document open, but let's create a new one. Command-N on a Mac or Control-N on a PC. And let's choose Landscape Orientation and click OK. And we'll go into the Window menu to Workspace and choose Like in Design. Let's also go into the View menu and uncheck Smart Guides. Now looking at the Tools panel, we see that every tool that has a little black triangle in the lower right-hand corner has hidden tools. So when I click and hold on the rectangle tool, I see the hidden tools. And let's go out here to the vertical bar, and when we release the mouse, we get a little tear-off toolbar. Now these are copies of the tools associated with the rectangle tool: the rounded rectangle, the ellipse, the polygon, the star, and the flare. Now with the rectangle tool, let's go ahead and click and drag, and we'll just draw a rectangle. And let's go ahead and fill it with a color. So I'm going to go over to the Tools panel and click on the Fill indicator, bring that to the front, and we'll go over to the Swatches panel and click on Cyan and fill it with cyan. Now we'll go back to the Tools panel and bring the Stroke indicator to the front, and back to the Swatches panel, and let's go ahead and stroke it with magenta. Now we'll click on the Stroke panel, and let's change the weight to 10 point so that we can see the stroke a little better. And now we have an object filled with cyan and stroked with magenta. Now there is a keyboard shortcut to toggle back and forth between the fill indicator and the stroke indicator, and that's the letter X. So every time we hit the letter X, we go back and forth between the fill indicator and the stroke indicator. Now if I wanted to swap the colors, I could click on this little double-headed arrow here, and now we have our object filled with magenta and stroked with cyan. But there's a shortcut for that as well. Hold down the Shift key and hit the letter X. So every time you hit the letter X with the Shift key down, you transpose the colors, you swap the two colors. Let's go ahead and hit the Delete key and just draw some more rectangles. So Illustrator remembers the last fill and stroke color we used. I'm going to use the keyboard shortcut to select all, Command-A on a Mac or Control-A on a PC, and then hit the Delete key. Now if we click and drag with the rectangle tool while holding down the Shift key, it constrains it to the shape of a square. So we can draw a bunch of squares. Select all, delete. Let's just draw one square, and we'll click and drag. And now let's go back and choose the Selection tool, the black arrow, and we can see the bounding box around the square, and we can push and pull on any of the handles around the bounding box and change the shape. We can also hover just outside one of the corners until we see a double-headed arrow, click and drag, and we can rotate using the bounding box. Let's delete that, and go back and choose the Rectangle tool, and this time just click once on the artboard, and we get the rectangle options. So we can type in an exact size. Let's make a 4x4 square, and there we go. Now let's choose the Rounded Rectangle tool, and we'll click and drag and create some rectangles with rounded corners. Select all, delete, and if we click and drag while holding down the Shift key, it constrains it to the shape of a square. So now we have a square with rounded corners. If we just click once with the Rounded Rectangle tool, we get the Rounded Rectangle dialog box, and let's put in 3x3, and we can change the corner radius, so let's make it a 1/4 inch, 0.25, and click OK. Let's delete that, and we'll go to the Ellipse tool. So we can click and drag, and we'll draw some ovals here. Select all, delete. Now when you click and drag with the Ellipse tool and hold down the Shift key, you constrain it to the shape of a circle. So hold down the Shift and click and drag, and we get a perfect circle. Select all, delete. Let's draw one more. We'll click and drag and hold down the Shift key to get a circle. Let's go back and get the selection tool, the black arrow, and we see that even though we have a circle, the bounding box still has right angles. And we can click on the handles to change the shape, and hover just outside one of the corners until we see the double-headed arrow, and click and drag to rotate. So we can use the bounding box to rotate. Let's go ahead and delete that, and we'll go back and select the Ellipse Tool. Now when you hold down the Option key on a Mac or the Alt key on a PC and click and drag with the Ellipse Tool, you drag from the center. And this is true for the rectangle and the rounded rectangle as well. Now, if we hold down the Option or Alt key and also the Shift key, when we click and drag, we get a circle drawn from the center. So we could draw a circle from the center like this, hover over the center, hold down the Option or Alt key and the Shift key, and draw another circle, hover over the center, and draw another one, and another one, so we get concentric circles. Select all, delete. And if we just click once with the Ellipse Tool, we get the dialog box so that we can type in the exact dimensions of our circle. Let's move on to the Polygon Tool. When we click and drag with the Polygon Tool, well, we have a triangle. Let's go ahead and delete those and just click once with the Polygon Tool. And let's change it to a 7-sided polygon. There we go. And so now when we click and drag, we get a 7-sided polygon. And as we click and drag, we can rotate. Select all, delete. Now if we click and drag using the Polygon Tool and we hold down the Shift key, it puts a flat side on the bottom. So when we click and drag, holding down the Shift key, every time we get one edge of the polygon flat on the bottom. Select all, delete. If we just click, we did that. Click once with the Polygon Tool, we can change the radius and the number of sides. Also, while we click and drag with the Polygon Tool, we can use the up and down arrow keys before we release the mouse and change the number of sides. So using the up and down arrow keys, I can go all the way down to 3 sides. So there we go, there's that triangle again. It turns out the Polygon Tool is a good tool to use if you want an equilateral triangle. Select all, delete, and as you click and drag and hold down the Shift key, it puts one flat side of the triangle at the bottom. Let's move on to the Star Tool. As we click and drag with the Star Tool, here we're getting a star burst. Let's go ahead and select those and delete, and just click once with the Star Tool, and let's change the number of points to 5 instead. There we go. There's a more traditional star. And as we click and drag with the Star Tool, we can rotate. And if you click and drag with the Star Tool and hold down the Shift key, it keeps 2 points on the ground, 2 feet on the ground. So holding down the Shift key and clicking and dragging with the Star Tool keeps 2 points on the ground. Let's select all, delete. Also, as you click and drag with the Star Tool, if you use the up and down arrow keys before you release the mouse, you can change the number of points on the star. And once again, we can go all the way down to 3 and make it a triangle. So we'll just keep the down arrow and held down until we get only 3 points on the star, and once again we've got that triangle. Select all, delete. And the last one is the flare tool. Now this is rarely used, but if we click and drag with the flare tool, it makes what looks like a flare that you get sometimes on a camera lens when it's hit by the sun just right. As I said, this is rarely used. The flare tool works best if you first import a photograph image into Illustrator and then do the flare tool on top of it. There you have it. We've looked at the shape tools in Illustrator: the rectangle, rounded rectangle, ellipse, polygon, star, and flare.